me now for your free reading.
Okay, I was wondering who the father of my baby was.
All right, let's take a look. I'm trying to help you to avoid the heartache. Don't you really want to know?
Call me now. I bet you can practically hear her voice in your head, right? With her tarot cards and that iconic Jamaican accent. She was like everywhere on late night TV for a while.
Yeah.
But just how much of that was like the real deal and how much was, all for those infomercials?
It really is amazing how Miss Cleo's story still has this hold on people. I mean, it's not even just about like psychic readings or anything. It taps into all these big ideas about like celebrity and the unknown and, that whole idea of believing and being deceived.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so first things first, let's rewind all the way back to the beginning.
Okay.
We've got Miss Cleo presenting herself as this, Jamaican spiritual advisor offering guidance through tarot readings. But I'm guessing things were not quite as they seemed.
That's putting it lightly. Okay, so her real name was Yuridel Harris. And she wasn't born under a Jamaican palm tree or anything, but in Los Angeles. And get this, even after her real background came out, even with like a totally made up birth certificate, she just kept on with that whole Jamaican persona.
No way. Seriously, a fake birth certificate. Okay, wow. I mean, I knew there was that whole thing with the Psychic Readers Network and all the legal trouble, but I had no idea that the deception went that deep.
It is a pretty bold move for sure. It really makes you think about why that Jamaican identity was so important to how she presented herself. I mean, psychics are often associated with this, exotic mystique and being connected to ancient wisdom and all that. And so presenting herself as like a Jamaican shaman probably made that whole image even stronger for people, playing into what people already expect and maybe even making her seem like more believable.
That makes a lot of sense, especially back then when, the internet wasn't what it is now. Like it wasn't as easy to fact check someone's whole life story.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, you mentioned the Psychic Readers Network. That's really where things totally blew up, right? I mean, they were making millions of dollars from all those late night calls, but then it all came crashing down. They had so much legal trouble.
Yeah, exactly. It was like the early 2000s when the Federal Trade Commission really came down hard on them. All these accusations of, misleading advertising and shady billing practices. Think about all those ads promising all these free readings that actually cost a ton of money. And all those calls, even after people tried to cancel, it was a whole mess.
I remember those commercials. They were everywhere. But okay, so beyond those flashy ads, how did they actually get people to call? What were their tactics?
Well, imagine you're feeling lost, maybe lonely, or like you're facing some tough decisions. And then you see this really charismatic person on TV promising to give you insights into your future and assuring you they can help you. That's pretty powerful, right? For people looking for, guidance or connection or whatever. And the way the network worked, unfortunately, it seems like they were really taking advantage of that.
So it wasn't really just about entertainment. There's a real element of exploitation going on.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. And the fact that the FTC had to get involved shows how seriously they were taking all of this. Deceptive advertising isn't just about exaggerating claims. It's about lying to consumers, misleading them, often so they lose money. And in this case, the network was totally crossing the line. And so the FTC stepped in to try to protect people.
And even though Miss Cleo wasn't personally indicted or anything, she definitely became the face of that whole scandal. I mean, everyone remembers that catchphrase of hers, "Call me now." But how did she deal with everything that happened afterward? Did she just disappear?
Not exactly. I mean, she was dropped from the lawsuit, but she had to deal with a lot of public ridicule. She even declared bankruptcy. It was a tough time for sure. But what's interesting? She actually kept doing readings privately. And she even charged more per session than the Psychic Readers Network did.
Wow, really? That's a pretty bold move after, everything that happened. It's almost like she was saying, okay, so that network is messed up, but I'm the real deal. What do you think?
Yeah, you could interpret it a few ways. Maybe it was her way of kind of taking back control, distancing herself from the whole scandal and then just connecting with people on her own terms. Or who knows, maybe she truly believed in what she did and saw it as a way to keep doing her work without the network, calling the shots.
So we've got this whole mix of alleged psychic abilities, these huge legal battles, and all these personal struggles. But her story doesn't end there, right? She went on to do some pretty unexpected things.
That's right. She was actually the voice of a character in the Grand Theft Auto Vice City video game.
You must be the big bad man my granddaddy been chatting about. Tell me things about you, when he visits, and about the others who wait for you.
She even released a spoken word CD and was in a documentary about telephone hotlines.
And in a way, being in Grand Theft Auto is almost like a wink to everyone, like a nod to how absurd it all is.
It definitely adds another layer to her story, for sure. And it also brings up the whole question of ownership, right? Like, who controls her image, her persona? Because even though she seemed to be moving on, the Psychic Readers Network wasn't ready to let go of the Miss Cleo brand.
You're talking about those lawsuits they filed, right?
Yeah.
Against companies like, what was it, General Mills and Benefit Cosmetics for using, the Miss Cleo persona in their ads without their permission.
Exactly. It's kind of ironic, considering the network basically built itself on a made-up identity. But legally speaking, they probably had a case for trademark infringement. It raises those complicated questions about who actually owns a persona, especially one that's been so commercially exploited.
It's almost like they wanted to have it both ways.
Mm-hmm.
Making money from a character they made up, while also saying they own the rights to that character as if it was, a real asset. That feels pretty ethically questionable, don't you think?
For sure. And it shows how much personal identity and commercial interests can get all mixed up, especially in, the entertainment world. Makes you think, who really wins in these legal battles? Is it about actually protecting a brand or more about power and control?
So we've got this larger-than-life persona, these legal battles, and this career that took some pretty crazy turns. But underneath it all, there was a real person, a woman named Jeree Dell Harris. What can you tell us about her life, apart from all the headlines and stuff?
Well, like I said, she had a whole life outside of being Miss Cleo. She got married when she was young, raised 2 daughters, and she came out as a lesbian in 2006. And knowing these things about her makes her seem more human, helps us to see beyond just, the caricature or whatever symbol of the scandal she became. She was a mother, a partner, just someone trying to figure out life, just like everyone else.
And her life was cut short way too soon. She passed away in 2016 from colorectal cancer. She was only 53.
It's a reminder that life is fragile. And it just adds another layer to her story, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And it's interesting that there's all this new interest in her life now, all these years later. We've got the HBO Max documentary Call Me Miss Cleo from a couple years ago, and then there's the Lifetime movie Miss Cleo.
It's pretty fascinating how her story still has this hold on us. Could be just nostalgia for the early 2000s, but I think it's more than that.
So what do you think is behind this new interest?
I think Miss Cleo's story speaks to things that are still really relevant today, like race, gender, identity, the whole idea of fame and how easy it is to exploit belief, and even the lines between what's real and what's fake. In a world where social media is everything, and we're always seeing these perfectly curated images and stories, her story almost feels like familiar.
Yeah, it makes you really think about the people we put up on pedestals, the stories we believe, and the power dynamics behind it all. It's like her story is a reflection of how obsessed we are with celebrity and how much we want easy answers and quick fixes.
It is a cautionary tale, for sure, but it's also a story about resilience and second chances and just how complicated people are.
Yeah, it definitely stays with you. And for anyone who wants to know more, really go deeper, those documentaries are a good place to start. And with that, we'll leave you with this. What does Miss Cleo's story tell us about how much we all want guidance, connection, and meaning? And how do we find those things in a world where truth and deception are so hard to separate?